Welcome, Dr. Dre Cleveland. What an amazing opportunity I have had meeting you. I'm so excited that you get to share with us at the 2026 Women of Color Leaders Symposium your medicine, your gift. And through this interview, we will all learn so much more about Dr. Dre and her work. But I want to start by just letting you know what the title of her workshop is. Embodied self mastery, particularly for women of color leaders. Dr. Dre Cleveland, your personal power coach, is a life coach, speaker, intuitive healer, and researcher dedicated to helping Black women heal emotional wounds, cultivate deep self love, and consciously manifest the lives they desire. As the creator of the Heal, Love, Manifest framework and the author of Black Girls Manifest, her work integrates psychological insight, spiritual wisdom, and identity reconstruction to support sustainable success and personal freedom. Through her coaching, writing, and speaking, Dr. Dre empowers high achieving women to move beyond, I say beyond, their survival patterns and step into embodied self mastery. Thank you so much for blessing us, gifting us with this chat, Dr. Dre. And I am excited and honored to be the one to ask you some questions about your work. How about that?
Yes, thank you, Santa. First of all, I love how you made me more excited about sharing this now, just the way that you introduced me. So thank you so much for
Absolutely. And audience, I hope you too are excited to receive this medicine. So sit back or lay down and just take it in. Let yourself, women of color leaders that are always doing something, let yourself just receive. You'll get Dr. Dre's information after the symposium. So just relax and enjoy.
indeed,
Yes,
indeed. Love.
wonderful. So, my first question, Dr. Dre, is many high achieving women of color are incredibly successful on paper,
Mhm.
but still they feel exhausted. They feel disconnected from their joy. What do you think is happening? What's at the bottom of this?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that there's misalignment.
Mm, mm,
And really that tends to be the reason, right? Like, so when we're feeling things that are the antithesis of joy, right? So it could look like exhaustion, it could look like stress, it could look like depression, right? It could look like overwhelm, it could look like, you name it, right? Anything that falls into that category is often because there is a lack of alignment
mm,
somewhere,
mm, mm,
right? What people don't understand, and I'm saying this from the perspective of, um I guess you could say this is more like on a psychological lens, right? When we are talking about emotions, first of all, we don't know what emotions mean, right?
mm,
We think that they're just things that we have, right? Like, all humans have emotions, and then, we feel the emotion, and then we have a reaction to the emotion. That's how we kind of live
mm,
life.
mm,
But our emotions are tools. They're actually a GPS for us to know what feels out of alignment or not
mm,
for us, right? So when we're feeling those things that feel like on the spectrum of what I'll say no, right? Because there's yes and there's no,
mhm,
right? At the
mhm,
core of all of that, it either feels like a yes, like I want to go that way, or it feels like a no, like I don't want to go that way, right? And the things that you were just mentioning are things that are in that no category usually,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
And if we were to ask those emotions, right, that feeling of exhaustion, that feeling of lack of joy, whatever the case is, what are you here for? Going to tell you something about what you value or what you need that you don't have in that moment,
mhm, mhm, mhm.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. We shy away from our emotions, and our emotions are our GPS.
Hmm.
It's the way our body says, pay attention,
Yeah.
right? And for so many women of color leaders, we override that because there's so much we need to do. But I
Mhm.
want to ask you this phrase that you use, embodied self mastery. I have the feeling that that's the way, like that's
Yeah.
the way out of the override.
Mhm.
Tell us about that, the embodied self mastery. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, it just really means one, how we learn to master ourselves, right? And what that means is actually you were kind of hitting on it, right?
Mm,
Most of us,
mm,
we just doing life. We're just in life doing things. A lot of things we're doing because we think that we're supposed to. A lot of things we think that we're doing because we have to. Like in other words, like if we didn't do it, we wouldn't survive. No one else would do it, so we have
mhm,
to do it.
mhm, mhm,
Our lives are run
mm,
by have tos, right?
mhm,
So we're always doing something. And
mhm,
so speaking of overriding, it deletes our ability to really align with ourselves
mhm,
and figure out like who am I underneath all of those things, even the way that we name ourselves, right? Especially high achieving women, right? Like, what's your name? Hi, I'm Dr. Dre. I'm your personal power coach. I do this for women. I'm also a mom. I'm also a sister. I'm also right, like all of the things of who you are to other people and what you bring to the world, which none of those things are bad, right? But they aren't, hi, I'm Dr. Dre Cleveland. You know, I'm a person who loves nature. I'm a person who is quiet and introspective. I'm a person who, you know, reads people. You know, I'm a person who enjoys color, right? Like nobody introduces themselves like that, right? The
mhm,
things that are innately you that I always say this to my clients, like if you were on a desert island somewhere and none of those other things existed, you didn't have the job you have, you didn't have the sisters and brothers you have, you didn't have the kids you have, or the marriage you have. If you were there by yourself, who would you be?
mm,
Without any of
mm,
that, right? So a big part of it is really understanding yourself at a deep level. But the
mm,
other part is
mm,
really understanding how and why you get the results that you get in your life, right? So that you're no longer blindsided by the results that you get,
mhm, mhm,
right? It doesn't mean do everything perfectly. That's not what we're saying. But what we are saying is that if I'm embodying what self mastery means, it means I understand the good and the bad. There's always yin and yang, right? There's
mhm,
a law of the universe that's called
mhm,
the law of polarity, right? That means
mhm,
that, you know, there's always two sides of the battery, so to speak. There's the
mhm.
positive and there's the negative. It's all on the same battery, though, right? And
Yes.
so self mastery and embodying that means I understand that yin and yang is always going to exist. That
Mhm,
polarity is always going to exist. So I'm not going to just focus on everything that's good about me, or I'm not going to focus on everything that's bad, right?
that's right. And
Some
what I
people
hear,
tend to
Dr.
do either.
Dre, yes, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I'm excited here because what I'm hearing is balance, right? How do
Mhm.
we balance who we are and keep tabs on what fills either one of those polarities, what feeds either one of those polarities, and make decisions that are
Mhm.
embodied. So embodied self-mastery, I'm curious about how is that different from the ideas of be disciplined, work on your self-improvement, which by the way, for women of color leaders, we're like wired to continue
Yeah.
to progress and do well and do good because you know what? There's a world out here that says we're not good enough. So it's a
Yeah.
trap. But tell us, how is it different from the traditional ideas of discipline and self-improvement?
Well, because it's just one side of the coin, right? Like, so exactly what we were just talking about, right? Like, there's that polarity. So when we hear, you know, be disciplined, work on personal development, do, you know, all the things. First of all, it usually insists that we're still doing things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we never get into the space of being, right? It always feels like more things to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be fair, do we need some level of discipline to shift um, our identity or shift ourselves enough to manifest what we want in our lives? Sure,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not uncommon, but also
Adding to part one, part two.
Yes. So, like I said, discipline is important. It's not something that I'm not saying that we don't need to be disciplined, but what
Mhm,
I'm saying is that if we are always in the space of being disciplined, like it's a different intention. It's a
mhm,
different intention than, you know, I'm practicing who I'm being.
mm,
Discipline is I'm still practicing doing. That's how it comes across to people. That's what we learn as the definition of be disciplined, right? Because I'm doing things, I'm doing more things,
mhm,
right? But we could also be practicing discipline in being still, right? We could
mhm,
also be practicing discipline in learning ourselves, right? And
mhm,
figuring out, what we really want and what we don't want, right? Do
mhm,
we want things because someone else said that we should want them, or
mm,
do we want them because it's really what's our heart's desire,
mm.
right? There's different parts of that, but all of that is part of self mastery versus just the doing of
Mhm,
things.
mhm. So this concept of self mastery, why is it important to us women of color leaders and the leadership spaces? Why is that important? Self-mastery.
Well, more so because, well, this is my opinion, but I think that, a lot of us would agree with this, right? We, especially in the Western world, I would say, right? We're kind of
Mhm,
trained to be a certain way. First of all, we're trained whatever leader looks like is already kind of framed by how it looks being here in America, in
mhm, mhm,
this space and time, and what that looks like, and what we believe we should be doing in order to be in that space. But the
mhm,
other thing is, a lot of it comes from who we believe we have to be because of who we've been pegged as in society, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
probably from the time that all of our, many ancestors either were brought here, or came here on their own, just as immigrants. But this country has a way.
mhm,
This country has a way of defining people,
mhm,
and if we're not strong enough, we succumb to that description, and
mhm,
we live into it,
mhm,
right? And so
mhm,
that's why embodied self-mastery is important, because that's what I mean by, are we being the way we're being because that's really the way I want to be, or because I've been made to be that way,
mhm, mhm,
right? There, for example, there's so many people, especially high achieving women of color, who feel like I have to be, really strict. I have to be really strong. I have to be really, right, because and there's a story behind it, right? Because that's how Black women have to be, or that's how women of color have to be,
mhm,
to compete in
mhm,
all this.
mhm, mhm.
But there's
Absolutely.
a flip, right? But there's a flip side, right? Because that's not true for everybody.
Mhm, mhm,
Right? I don't think that I fit that description at all. I'm pretty soft, to be fair.
mhm,
Right? But and I say that to say, right, like there's always, like I said, there's always two sides of the coin and then everything in between, right?
mhm,
There's a lot of gray area, but sometimes we're not aware of it because we're so focused on the way that things are, or the way that things have been, and we continue to feed into it. We live into it.
mhm,
Sometimes unbeknownst to ourselves, we're just kind of repeating what we hear,
mhm,
right? And then we get examples in real life, and so we're like, yes, so that means that's true because here's an experience right here, right? But they aren't the only
mhm.
experience.
That's right. There's a sister who has spoken about the imposter syndrome, and I just want to
Mhm,
share that that's coming up for me right now as you speak about the importance of self-mastery and deciding who it is that we want to be and how
mhm,
we show up. And her comment was, yeah, if you feel like an imposter, guess what? Maybe you are. And her rationale was because the systems that we're trying to live into, the systems that we're trying to grow with, were not created for us to succeed. And
yeah,
so, hence her sense of, yeah, we are imposters. These systems were not created for us to succeed. And so we find ourselves, and I wonder what you think about this, but we find ourselves, Dr. Dre, doing more and more and more to try to get ourselves to a place where we feel comfortable when, you know what, you're not going to feel comfortable doing more or being more of whatever it is we're told we have to be, because that's not how we succeed. We succeed by being aware of who we are and what we bring. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely that. And the other thing about that too is that we have to be really careful of how, well, I'll say it this way, because
Mhm.
most people are not aware of this underlying thing, right? Like I said, like there's laws of the universe that are always working, whether we know about them or not. Just the way that gravity is always working, whether you understand it or you don't.
Mhm.
There are other laws of the universe that are always working, whether you understand them or you don't, right? And so everybody has heard of the law of attraction.
Mhm.
Not everybody understands it. Not everybody believes in it, but I want to say right here, right now, it's not a thing to believe in. It's just a thing that's true. It's a thing
Mhm.
that is. Like I said, just like gravity's a thing. You could say I don't believe in gravity, but I bet you know not to jump off of a building without a parachute because there's something at work there that whether you can see it or you don't, or you understand or you don't, it's there.
That's,
Right. And that's the way that it is in general with the laws of the universe. And
mhm.
one thing that is important, and this is what you were saying is part of what I was saying about, what we tend to continue to live into, right? It is true that this system was not made for us. Our job is to focus less on that it wasn't made for us and focus on what we want to create instead,
That's
right? Otherwise, we're continuing to perpetuate that and live into it, right? And then it doesn't help that, yeah, you kind of live in a capitalist society. So now we're going to have the story attached to it too of, well, I got to work, I got to do the things, I got to, right? Which
absolutely.
continues to then perpetuate it versus, how do I get free of that? How do I still stand up as leader and define what leader is and then walk into rooms and let them shift around me?
Sounds wonderful. What a powerful position to be in, right? So,
Yeah.
this kind of motivates me to ask you more about your work through Black Girls Manifest. You talk a lot about healing, you talk a lot about identity and manifesting. How does that healing connect to leadership? How does us doing our own personal work, not what someone else decides we need to work on, but our own personal work, how does that connect to leadership and success?
Well, more so, well, and you know what I love about this conversation? All the questions are really kind of bringing us back to the same point,
Mm, mm,
right? Which is true alignment,
that's right.
right? The ability and the invitation for us to show up as our authentic selves.
Mhm, mhm,
And that's the most important part, and without that healing part, which is what we're talking about, like how did we get the thoughts that we think, right?
mm,
how did we navigate our lives so far just based on what we thought to be true versus what can be true for us? Most people haven't even ever had permission to think for themselves,
wow. Yes.
right? And so but that's healing work.
Mhm,
That's healing work, right? Otherwise, we stay caught in cycles, and then we can't
absolutely.
figure out like why do I keep repeating the same patterns? Why
Mm,
do I keep that? It doesn't even have to be just about me as a leader, right? In a business or in a corporation, right? Why do I
mm,
always have the same relationships, even
that's
though they're different people,
right.
right? Why do I, I'm still saying that I want to lose weight and here I am 5, 6 years later and I'm still in the same place, right? Like it's every aspect of our lives
Mhm,
where if we don't take the time to actually bring awareness to the way that we think about things, the way that we show up about things, and actually dissect how did I even get here?
that's right.
And not only how did I get here, but who do I have to be now? Right?
Mm,
That's the
mm,
identity work. Who
yeah.
do I have to be now in order to call in what I
Mm,
say that
mm,
I want? If I'm working with someone, it usually takes us about 5 sessions, no more than that, unless they just want to keep talking because, people, right? But it doesn't generally take more than that for them to define that. One lady today, I'm just using this as an example. I was talking to her, and she's really, really young too. She's in her 20s, but she got married to someone because she's a people pleaser by nature,
mm, mm,
right? And she said to herself, like, if I didn't have that as a way of being, I wouldn't have ever gotten married to this
Right.
person at all. I did that because I felt that part of me saying, it's okay. It's not going to be that bad. This is what this person,
Oh. Mhm.
right? But we do that. We do that in business. We
Mhm.
do that in relationships. We do that, in different parts of our lives, right? But she's naming that as people pleaser. How
Mhm.
many of us, right, could raise our hand and go, that's part of who I've been being, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And the most important thing that she says she wanted to get out, and this was last week. I just spoke to her today. This is why she's the example I'm saying, right? She was like, I don't want to tell my partner that I want a divorce.
Mm.
And told me all the reasons and all the stories behind it. And we did some work around that and that identity piece for her. And today she was like, well, I want you to know, I actually spoke to my partner on the phone and, we agreed that we're getting divorced. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, you did,
Mhm.
right? But I say that to say, right, it could be something that you've been struggling with for months, maybe even years,
Mhm.
right? Some people for their whole life, to be fair.
Mhm.
Whatever those
Mhm.
things are, you have to understand that you get the same results that you get in your life because you are still the same person
That's right.
operating. It doesn't matter, a different day, it may be a different year, it may be, but if you brought the same person to the party is gonna go the same way.
Yes, yes, Dr. Dre. And that reminds me of the people who say geographical changes don't change the people.
It
Right?
don't,
You can move, you can change your job, your
right?
vocation, the location where you live. It doesn't change you because what I'm hearing is we are operating, and I'm not claiming that, but there
Mhm,
are people who are operating on survival
mhm,
instead of self mastery. What has worked, so they think, in the past? What
mhm,
has been easier to manage? What has been acceptable? Like a young lady who gets married because she doesn't want to hurt somebody's feeling and she's just a people pleaser,
mhm,
right? So how do people begin to distinguish? And maybe we've talked about this already earlier, but distinguish, am I operating from a place of survival or am I operating from a place of self mastery? How do I move into that
yeah.
space of beginning to change how I am operating?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, right, kind of goes back to the very first question that you asked, right? How do you know? Well, you know because you feel that dissonance. When we said
Mhm.
you're gonna
Mhm.
know, there's gonna be a misalignment,
Mhm.
right? That lady knew from the day she said yes
Mhm.
that that wasn't in alignment,
Mhm.
right? But she ignored it,
Mhm.
right? More so because she didn't understand how to listen to herself, how to embody that self mastery, right? She didn't,
Mhm.
but she felt it. She knew that wasn't the right decision for her.
That's right.
Right? So you're always gonna feel the dissonance
Mhm.
when something's not aligned.
Mhm.
You're always gonna feel it, so you're gonna know. And
Absolutely.
then yeah, and then after that, I always tell people, and this is what I was saying about the identity piece, is first identifying, like we were saying before, like what do I need or value that's important to me?
Mhm.
What has to happen in this space, right?
Mhm.
Then who do I need to become in order to have that happen?
Mhm.
Right? That's the next question. Like, for example, I always use myself as the biggest example because, first of all, it can't get no bigger of an example than this,
Mhm.
right? And more so because it's me, right? I'm the one that's talking. But, you know, so I started coaching like 20 years ago.
Mhm.
For that, though, I was extremely shy. I never wanted to talk to people. Like this conversation that I would never, I would never. Right?
Mhm.
I would literally hyperventilate if I had to stand up in front of people
Mhm.
just to say my name, right? We just introducing ourselves, and I'm like, "Oh my god, they're gonna call me. I gotta," right? Like all of that's happening in my mind, right? I was even a valedictorian of my class in high school, and I was sweating. I cried because I
Oh.
had to talk in front of all these people. I didn't know, right? It was that kind of bad, is what I'm saying. I would
Mhm.
never think of having this as my profession. Why would I do that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That me back there could never do what I'm doing right now.
Mhm.
But over time, I practiced and learned how to shift my identity, right? I knew that I was going to be, I wanted to be doing this kind of work. I
Mhm.
didn't know what way, right? But I knew that
Mhm.
me over there wasn't the person to do it, trust me, right? And it just took time of me being able to shift who I'm being, step into spaces, practicing, speaking of embodiment, right? Because that's what embodiment means, that you're actually practicing,
That's right.
right? And finding myself in spaces, voluntarily putting myself in spaces on purpose. It's what you
Mm-hmm.
got to do, ladies. I'm sorry, it's what you got to do. But you know, putting yourself in spaces on purpose to practice
Mm-hmm.
that embodiment, right? To shift the paradigm, like I said, to not keep playing the same story out,
Absolutely. I
right?
love that. Yes.
You have to make those changes yourself. But I say that to say that the person that you're looking at now was not me 20 years ago. And so I say I'm a living, breathing example
Mm.
of shifting your identity so that you could have what you want. Because if this was what I wanted, that lady over there could not hold this.
That's right. That's right. And that is, part of that. You spoke about the law of attraction,
Mhm.
the law of manifestation, right? Is that we need to believe, right, that we can be that person that we want to be, and then test it out, be uncomfortable, stretch out, notice, right,
Yeah.
what it feels like to achieve those changes. So actually it's inspiring to I have not known the shy Dr. Dre, so it's very inspiring to hear that, yeah, change can happen, but it means that we need to decide, right, to lean into who we are, that self-mastery, get to know who we are, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
also really curious, Dr. Dre. So, because as you speak, I'm hearing psychology, but then there's, the law of attraction or manifestation. I hear metaphysics, and I'm just wondering how does this framework between science and then spiritual metaphysical concepts, how do you work with them? How do you bring them together? How do those ideas come together in your work?
Ah, well, my favorite subject, Santa.
Yes.
Well, for me, like they go together naturally,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So what I do is I would say that I'm a translator, right? So you know how there's people that know a lot of languages and they could, be the person who, I guess at the United Nations and they can translate, okay, well they said this and then, this person said this, right? And that's how it feels to me, right? They're all different languages to say the same thing. And that's what I've learned in my studies and my research because my doctorate is in metaphysical science. And I spent a lot of time on consciousness studies and quantum physics. And so what I learned is that a lot of the tools and the techniques that we use in psychology, because I'm also a mental health coach, that's what I do during the day, right? A lot of those technologies are metaphysical technologies. We're just calling it something different because we're in a different space, in a different, you know, um, way, a different mode.
A
But
different
it's the same,
language, right?
right?
It's
It's a
just a
different
different
language,
language.
right? But we're still saying the same thing. And there's a lot of research. This is my favorite part, right? Because when I was younger, like I was always, people call it woo woo, right? Like I was always very spiritual, right? Even as a very young child, like I knew that I was manifesting thing or I would say things and they would happen. I used to just think I was a witch, to be honest. But whatever, that's another way of saying the same thing too. But if that's the case, we all are, right? Because we're all doing that. We're all always manifesting, right?
Mhm,
It's just whether or
mhm.
not you're doing it consciously or you are not, right? And
And
so
also, Dr. Dre, knowing whether you're consciously or not manifesting, and what are you manifesting?
right, and
What
what are
I've
you
gotten from you thus far. Yes,
exactly,
yes.
exactly.
Mhm, mhm,
And so with that knowledge, right, I always find myself in like I guess esoteric circles because that's just the language that I naturally spoke.
mhm,
But I would also notice that people, that I don't that's not even real. Like that's not a thing, especially the law of attraction, right? It's gotten so much bad rap, but that's like being like, gravity's not a thing. Right. I
mhm,
always use that as an example because people know gravity's a thing and you can't see it. So,
mhm,
right. But when I did my dissertation, I said, I really want to focus on the science of
mhm,
manifestation
mhm,
because I need people to see like this is not play. There
mhm,
is actual empirical science and studies that
mhm.
show you that this is how your universe works.
That's right. Right.
That's it and that's all.
That's it,
So if
and
you
that's
know
all.
that,
Mhm,
exactly.
mhm,
So if you know that, it's like on the Matrix, you take the red pill or the blue pill. Now, if you take the pill, you can't unsee. what you're going to see,
Mhm.
right? So in the book, I happen to have it right here. Black Girl Manifest, right? But in the book, I make those translations and I make those, those connections so people could see, like when our mothers, especially in people of colors families, like they pray over you or they do, right? They're
Mhm. Mhm.
they're they're saying collective energy focused in one area
Mhm.
moves
Mhm.
things, and it does.
Mhm.
And that's a
Absolutely.
real thing, right? And there
Absolutely.
are studies that say that, right?
Mhm.
But you could
Mhm.
go look up by yourself. Like I didn't make them up,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
You know,
Even though you're woo woo, there is science, right?
right.
And
There is
we
science.
can't deny the science.
Hmm.
So, you just reminded me of how often I know I say to myself, and I invite those others to think about how we are co-creators.
Hmm.
And whether
Absolutely.
that comes from a place of faith or some other metaphysical formula, we are co-creators. We are
Mhm.
creating our realities.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes, particularly when we come from realities that have been really harsh, from backgrounds that have been challenging, to take that on. But
Yeah.
I want you to say something about that invitation, right? Like, how do we begin to lead from that place of self-mastery, and really honor and believe that we're co-creators? So just wanted you to talk a little bit about that, and what is the shift that those who are listening could make immediately to move towards that embodied self mastery and really be co creating what they
Yeah.
want.
What they want. Yes.
Yeah.
So the easiest thing that I'm gonna say, because like I said, I love your questions. All your questions, like, speaking of translating and bringing things back to, one core theme,
Mm.
right? The thing that I would say, and I'll end with this because I know that we're almost
No,
at
we're
time
good.
too.
We have time. Hmm.
Okay. Um, the
Hmm.
main thing that I would tell people, one, read the book. How about
Hmm.
that? That wasn't what I was gonna say, but now that I'm thinking about it, read the book. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes we need those translations,
Hmm.
right? Like I said, sometimes we're so trained to think a certain way that it's
Hmm.
hard to think outside of that. And
Hmm.
and like I said, my very strong opinion from having shared this work with people at different conferences and things over the years since I had done my doctorate,
Hmm.
it's mind blowing. It's a reckoning,
Hmm.
right? Because people do not think of this way. We do not understand our world and our universe in a quantum way. We know it exists,
Hmm.
right? But we don't live it that way,
Hmm.
right? So understanding that that exists, once you get it through your head, like this is really the way it is. Like I could say I don't believe in the law of attraction all I want. I could say that, but that's still what's happening.
That's right.
I still have to be aware that in my leadership, that means in my, corporate job, in my business, if I'm the leader, as a mother, as a wife, as a
Hmm.
girlfriend, as a, fill in the blank, whatever role you're focused on, once you realize, like, I am actually the person that's helping this
Hmm.
to go the way that it's
Hmm.
going,
Hmm.
you're going to realize there's no victims here.
Hmm.
And so once you understand that, it does get first you're going to be real sad and you're going to be mad at me, and I don't care, to be fair, right? It's okay, right? It's a different way of looking,
Hmm.
right? But
Hmm.
once you realize that, there's going to be a power that comes over you that you say, you know what? That means that if I really want this to change, I can change it.
That's right.
And there's empirical evidence that shows that I'm the one that can change it. And that's what I was trying to say before about the law of attraction when I first brought it up, that, once you step into that space inside your body, and that's who you're being out here, the universe, God, whoever you want to, whatever you want, it's all the same. We just translating it differently, right?
Hmm.
Literally the things that you want and the things that's how I found you, Santa. Somebody just said, here's a thing. And
Hmm.
it resonated, like we are 100% in alignment.
Hmm.
I didn't
Absolutely.
find you somewhere. I didn't go do more things to
Hmm.
find you. You see
Hmm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
didn't happen.
Mhm,
You came to me,
mhm, mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
because I'm aligned and I know what I'm standing for. I know what I'm focused on,
Mhm.
and I know what my path is,
Mhm.
and what I want to be able to bring to women of color.
Wonderful,
I'm
wonderful,
just clear,
wonderful,
and
wonderful.
that happens,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
so, speaking of what you said, like that's what I want women to understand. Like that's what you're going to be able to have access to. That happens to you anyway. It happens to you anyway. This is not like a miraculous thing that's happening. It's just that I'm aware what I'm controlling,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? That is happening to you too. And so if you step into a room and you have the story that is because I'm a woman of color that they're treating me this way,
Mm.
guess what you're going to keep experiencing, so you could be right.
Mhm.
I don't have that experience. There
Mhm.
are plenty of women of color who don't have that experience. That means that it's not a blanket statement.
Mhm.
You have to realize what you're putting energy on, you
Mhm.
are calling back to you. If you don't want that to keep happening, you have to learn how to control it.
That's right. That's right. Dr. Dre, you mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you said when you were a kid or even today, this idea of being a witch. And the
Yeah.
thing that comes up for me is we are casting spells
Yeah.
all the time, right?
Hmm.
So I like saying to clients, watch what you're thinking, watch what you're saying, watch who is surrounding you, because all of that is creating a reality, is attracting more of it, right?
Hmm.
So, because we are running out of time now, I want to ask you one very important question, and that is how does this new way of thinking, this owning our self mastery, how does that change our ability to be successful women of color leaders? Tell us just anything you want to share about that. How is this really going to change our business,
Yeah.
our
Well, it's
work,
going
our
to change.
money? Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to change because, like I said before, it's going to be real alignment,
Mm.
real authenticity. And so what you're calling in is going to be exactly aligned with who you are, right?
Mhm,
Like I said, the example I just gave about finding you,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm.
It's because I'm aligned
That's right.
right now, right? And so because that's happening, there are other things that are also doing this,
Mhm,
right? All at the same time. I'm
mhm.
not doing anything, right? I'm literally not doing anything,
Mhm,
right? But
mhm,
but that's how it's going to change. Like success is going to be like we're saying in the beginning, success is not, all the trappings of the things that other people told you are success. Success is going to be I'm moving with purpose. I'm
mhm,
moving with my full authentic self.
mhm,
Nobody can tell me who I get to be. I'm just being that girl.
mhm.
And the people who resonate and the things that are supposed to be around me because that's who I say I am are going to find me. I'm not trying to
Absolutely,
fit into that over there.
absolutely, absolutely. I love it. I love it. How powerful, how empowering. And so, now it's time for us to really take that step and move away from the lies, right, of who we're supposed to be as opposed to who we are, and really owning that power that we have. And I just like always reminding myself, I am co-creating. What am I going to create today?
Yes.
How am I going to play that role today? Right?
Hmm.
How am I going to bring to me the things that I need today?
Yeah.
And they may not show up today, they may not show up in the way that I envision them, but I'm
Hmm.
holding that they will show up, which brings up this other thing. How often do things come to us and we say, oh, that doesn't look like what I imagined,
Right.
and send it away? Let's wrap up with that one, Dr. Dre. How often, right, are we manifesting? We're claiming that we want X, Y, and Z, but then when it shows up, we're like, oh, I don't recognize it. It must not be the answer to
Hmm.
the prayer. What do you want to
Yeah,
say about
yeah.
that?
And that's usually because we're still trying to control things, right? Just like I was saying before, right? Like we just have our way that we think things go, right?
Mhm,
And that translates into the things that we're manifesting, right? Or our
mhm,
goals, or whatever the case is, versus just being, like I said, if you're being the person who holds whatever that higher thing is that you're saying, you allow God, you allow the universe to fill in the blanks. You don't have the answer.
that's right.
right? And if you realize that, it's easier for you to recognize when something is part of you. I call it the breadcrumbs, right? Like the breadcrumbs that are pulling towards you. I go, oh, this is happening, right? Without that, you're like, well, it doesn't look like this, so that can't be that. And now you dismissed it. And literally, I always imagine God, like, now I'll be clear with you. I don't think that God is like a person in the sky doing the things. People do, and that's fine. But I imagine, like, if God was a person up there doing that, he would be like, now, you just asked me to get like, why would you do, I imagine that happen. It tickles me. But that's because we do that, because we are stopping progress because we think it should look a certain way,
Absolutely.
and it doesn't.
Absolutely. Or because we believe that it's supposed to be a challenge and a struggle.
Yeah.
I want to say one other thing before I ask you where people can find you, reach you. Um, I grew up, I'm Latina, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I grew up in a Latin family. And the popular saying, whenever my mom was asked, "How are you, Señora Hilda?" En la lucha. And I couldn't quite understand. En la lucha means in the struggle,
Mhm.
the reinforcement. And my mother died in the struggle,
Mm, yeah.
because that was her phrase. I don't
Yeah.
even think she thought about it when it came out of her mouth. How are you
Mhm.
doing? In the struggle, in the fight, right?
Mhm.
So watch
Mm.
what we say. Notice how what's happening around us makes us feel, discern, assess, and
Mhm.
step into your self mastery, really knowing for yourself. Thank you so much, Dr. Dre. I love you. Thank you for bringing your wisdom. And so, how do people find you, touch base with you? And again, they're going to get all of this, but just give it to them now. Give it to them now.
Well, they can find me on heallovemanifest.com. That's my website. And, on social media, girl, get your life together.
Ah,
Because that's my brand, because girl, get your life together.
yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being part of the 2026 Women of Color Leaders Symposium. What a gift. And audience, I hope you enjoyed and that you stepped away with a new commitment to really master yourself, self mastery. Learn yourself, learn what you need, and learn what you're attracting. So, thank you. And just hang out because there's more to come. Dr. Dre, thank you again. See you around. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.